1850 715 150.
Now, just to give the person across from me a little bit of a jolt, can I read you a caller from another person? This is about the cheese ads, and a lot of people saying nonsense that people have to eat cheese and that they need it for their bones and so on and so forth. But anyway, Sheila says, is the nanny state gone mad? I'm 73. I'm in good health. I hate fruit and vegetable, except for spuds. I grew up in a two-parent smoking household and continued the habit. Exercise is the answer, said Sheila. And I know that, Austin Darragh, that won't go down well with you.
Exercise is the answer to a point, within reason. But we have a situation now in this country and in the developed world where a condition called chronic fatigue syndrome is very prevalent. About 1 in 250 people in this country could be suffering from some form of chronic fatigue syndrome. But it also afflicts athletes who are training and overtraining. And they get exactly the same thing with fatigue and with depression and the potential for suicide.
My goodness me. But we've got very quick to a very drastic situation. One of the things that we're going to talk about today really arises out of the census results that we had. And 22%, there's a rise of 22% in Ireland's population aged 85 years or over. What are the consequences of that?
The consequence of that is a huge impact on the economics of health. Mm-hmm. And that these people are living because of the huge advances in medical science which took place from the mid-1800s, mm-hmm. and which led ultimately to the discovery of the meaning of bacteria, to then with Pasteur isolating the germs, with leading on then to Lister developing antibiotic activity of carbolic acid and chlorine, to the advent then in the early 20th century of sulfonamides, then to the antibiotics, then to the advances in anesthesiology. So huge advances in easing the consequences of disease have taken place.
Right.
Net result is, of course, we're living longer, but with huge increase in certain diseases which are associated with lifestyle.
Like?
Obesity,
yeah,
type 2 diabetes, heart disease and cancer. That's enough to go on with.
It is enough to start.
One thing it leads to all of that. Lack of proper sleep.
Sleep?
Sleep. Yes. What your granny said, an hour before midnight, you're not in the head there.
Yeah.
An hour before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight. We are programmed genetically, established over the last 5,000 years since we became settled farmers, that our days begin at 4 a.m. hormonally. That's why the convents and the monasteries for 3,000 years have that matins.
I thought that was just for punishment.
No, the punishment was not doing it. But now we have a situation where in the last 300 years, since the establishment of the Industrial Revolution, that we now have tried to make people work 24 hours a day. The net result is, I find medically anyhow, that this country is afflicted by the Irish disease. What that? The Irish disease. The Irish never go to bed the same day they get up. What time do you go to bed at?
Well, I go to bed the same day I get up, I think.
But the vast majority of people don't.
So, to stay healthy, because if you take a person in their 80s, hale and hearty, I mean, you're an example. Sure, you're as healthy as a trout. And
to get the curiosity out of the way, I'm 85.
Are you 85?
Yes. Next month.
You're not.
I am.
So, what is the secret to healthy ageing?
I think being well looked after by your wife, well fed. Mm-hmm. I think also having a happy life and being worthwhile. Moderation in all things. And certainly being endowed with the right genes. You can't beat that. I do go to bed early.
Right.
As long as my phone lets me. I like to get to bed around about 10 o'clock at night. But let me come back to that. It is essential to conform to the style that we have in our genes. Our genes said that we should wake early, work hard during the day, relax when the sun starts to go down, and then be prepared to ease off the brain particularly not be all revved up, going to bed, producing far too much cortisone from stress, and then not being able to get advantage from the sleep hormone melatonin, which the body starts to produce at 9 o'clock at night. And the melatonin level in your bloodstream, for most people I'm talking about, reaches sedation level at 10 o'clock. If you're stressed, or even by looking at the news, you produce cortisone. Cortisone primitively tells the brain you're under stress and being challenged, so you'll switch off the sleep-making hormone because you don't want to be trampled by an elephant coming out of the jungle at you.
I'm just thinking that removes all the viewers and listeners for late-night political programmes that could increase the blood pressure a little bit.
Yes, indeed. But also one has to recognise that today, I'll be back to my old favourite topic, that people who have to take caffeine to stay awake are impairing the quality of their sleep. Why? Because although you take your caffeine in the early afternoon, caffeine and other chemicals which are present will keep present in your bloodstream for up to 25 hours. One in particular, theophylline, which is as powerful as caffeine as a stimulant, stays in the bloodstream for 45 hours. So when you're...
That's tea?
Tea, coffee, cocoa and chocolate. Chocolate? Yes, chocolate.
Yeah, because you hear of people having a cup of hot chocolate before they go to bed, or a cup of cocoa, or tea.
Well, all containing chocolate contains 25 milligrams of caffeine per ounce. So a 4-ounce bar has the same as a cup of coffee. And the fact it is a stimulant.
And what impact does that have on sleep?
Well, first of all, it's an alerting. It stimulates the amount of adrenaline that's circulating in the body. So that's going to not ease the mind and go to sleep. Secondly, caffeine, besides its stimulant effect, has a potentiating effect on the action of other chemicals in the body, because many chemicals have to have the services of what they call a second messenger, and the second messenger is supposed to just deliver the message and is destroyed immediately. But the destruction of it is inhibited by caffeine. So you get potentiation of effect of body chemicals and some chemicals which you take in as well, like your medications,
right,
which leads to overdosage.
All from the cup of tea?
From the cup of tea we're not arguing about. I'm talking about people who'll have to admit take 8 mugs of tea or coffee a day. And the last one, I'm going to bed, doctor.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite a tea drinker myself, it has to be said. But you think that you'd put that up there high on the list for the healthy living. You said about exercise. Exercise, food, early to bed.
Yes. And being at peace with yourself and your neighbours, and having the ability to meet grief when it hits you by being able to have people who'll console you. Grief is a tremendous stressor, and we're surrounded by grief today, and not to have somebody whose arms will be put around you to say, I'm sorry about that. Mm-hmm. We're such an isolated society today, although we live in great communities.
Yeah.
We all have a wall of privacy around us, which allows us not to let our hair down, and I've got some still.
Right. So, I mean, because presumably for many people in their 80s, they might have gone through bereavement of a husband or a wife.
Well, that's a natural consequence, but the thing is that grieving has to be organised and accepted in a proper way. Fortunately, in a society which has a faith, whether it's Muslims or Jews or Christians or others, there is an acceptance of the fact that there will be some place beyond here where we'll be meeting again. Mm-hmm. And there's consolation. The consolation that comes from religion should not be discounted.
And is it related also to health?
Yes, to be able to feel that you're not alone, that there's something out there that you can rely upon to help you if you address it.
Right.
That is a huge consolation. And I find with patients, it's a huge consolation to patients to feel that I'll go and say some prayers. You know, when you tell them the bad news,
right,
or bad news for a child. They feel the consolation it has in the religion. And I'm talking about religion across the board.
Right.
The widest spectrum of religion.
That's very, very interesting. Now, you also talk about the sun in the context of staying healthy.
Yes. The sun is what determines our existence completely. We're leaning on a wooden table, and we're wearing clothes and everything else. Everything that we have of a material nature has been donated to us by the sun through electromagnetism, working on vegetation, which produces all of the carbohydrate from which other things are made. And apart from that, every instant that we're alive, we're dependent upon energy which originated 93 million miles away 8 minutes before in the sun.
And there are so many warnings nowadays about sun and wearing a hat and staying in the shade and putting on blockers and all of that kind of thing in order to avoid cancers.
Yes, like everything else, we're talking about moderation. And we're talking about also even using sunscreens to protect yourself. You'll deprive yourself then of vitamin D if you use too much of it. And vitamin D is very necessary for your bones.
So say for yourself, if you were going out in the sun, do you wear a heavy blocker?
No, unless we're going to the beach.
Yeah.
Or if it's an atmosphere where there's going to be a very undiluted effect of ultraviolet light.
Yeah.
You've got to be sensible about it. And certainly I would wear a sunscreen if necessary.
Yes.
Especially if I'm near a water source where the light will reflect it off and get the bounce off of a bright wall behind you.
Yeah.
But mostly I would wear a cap or a hat and clothes.
You wouldn't wear the factor 60s and that?
I'm afraid not. But then I've survived this long anyhow without it. But I've also had my go of basal cell carcinoma from not doing it.
You have had?
I have had, yes.
Yeah.
Facial carcinoma.
Yeah.
Which successfully treated, thank God. But so don't escape if you're stupid.
Right. And do you take much exercise?
I used to do. I take as much as I can now with artificial knees. But I took a lot of exercise. I rode a lot of horses. And when I could, I rode and hunted 3 days a week. That'll put off an awful lot of people now. But nevertheless, with horse exercises, you have to be available to exercise a horse on a regular basis. So that, I would say, contributed a lot to the fact. And when I was younger, I played a lot of sports and enjoyed life doing it.
Right. So, and now that you have knee replacements, does that end exercise?
It ends impacting exercise, but doesn't stop me walking or swimming, which I don't do enough of.
Right.
In case people are listening who know me.
Who do know the truth. Yeah, that's the problem about being on the radio. Well, I have to tell you that healthy is, you are certainly looking really healthy. Sun, sleep, stress. And
but let's come back to sleep, but let's go to sun in the first instance. We need the sun to provide all the energy necessary on this planet. And that energy can't be given to us except by a process which has a long name called photosynthesis. The photosynthesis takes the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere plus water with the help of chlorophyll to produce all the biomass we require. Unfortunately, the photosynthetic capacity of the planet has now been reduced to greater than 50% by man's doing. We are in a situation now where there is ecological debt in many of the developed world populations. Ecological debt means we're not producing enough food on the land we have access to feed our population. Our next door neighbours are in big trouble because they were in ecological debt from the 14th of April 2009, which meant they couldn't produce enough food on the island of the UK for the 63 million people there. This is compounded by the severe drought which is now affecting southeast and east England and is creeping up the Midlands. They are going to have a massive problem because the drought has led to huge shortage of waters all over the lakes and rivers of England and the subterranean aquifers. And what is going to happen when 1 million or more people crowd into southern England for the Olympics is mind-boggling.
In terms of water?
In terms of water, and therefore the food, which is... There are many farmers now in the southeast of England who are not bothering to plough or cultivate 20% of their land because there's not enough water.
Well, I presume that's going to be a problem that is going to grow and grow and grow. Anyway, as always, so interesting. Austin Darragh, thank you very, very much indeed for coming.
Great pleasure to be able to meet you again.
1850 715 150.